Hi guys, I'm super excited. I'm here with Lead IRO for care leavers, Chris Morrison at the City of London. I'm super excited because Chris has taken some time out of his busy schedule to have a discussion here with me today. So thanks, Chris, for taking the time out.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you the first question. And look, we've been through a pandemic, nearly heading into year 2 now. How has this really affected young people who have, suffer abuse at home? How has it actually affected them being kind of limited to being in the house where the abuse is actually taking place?
I think for me, a lot of the young people that I work with, having to face, or that I speak with, having to face their reality has been quite a shock to the system for them. So they're turning to self-harm. They're having suicidal thoughts, and they're not actually, it's quite difficult for them to actually have these conversations with those around them. So I also do some part-time work for a leading charity in the UK, children's charity, and we provide telephone counselling. And a lot of the themes that come through is self-harm, is anxiety, a lot of mental health. Why? Because of a lot of them has been caused as a result of the pandemic. The pandemic has actually shaken a lot of young people in more ways than none. And what I find is that because there is a cut to many different therapeutic services, there's a cut to many different, counseling services that are out there, a lot of young people just don't know what to do. They just are completely lost. And so for me, it's always like, okay, Chris, how can you be the light in this situation? How can you support this young person going through this? What do they need to hear to help them to overcome certain things that they're going through?
No, of course, and I can see that you're very passionate about supporting young people, and it's good to see because that's within social work, that's what we need more of, right? We need the right people that are passionate about supporting these young people. And now I guess we're at a place where we are heading out of the pandemic or lockdown as such. Probably the pandemic will continue, but the lockdown will ease. But heading out of lockdown now means that from a social work perspective as a sector, we've kind of got to have a recovery plan in place to support these young people who have endured this kind of, or been exposed to this level of abuse for a prolonged amount of time. How do you suggest we're going to tackle that as a sector?
I think we can't ignore the fact that we need finances. So for example, we have a young person that I work with as a care leaver, wants to now he's picked up an additional skill during the pandemic, wants to now get a job, but he needs to do his driving lessons. So he needs to be able to do the driving lessons so that he can actually work for Amazon doing some part-time delivery and stuff like that. So we need to be able to say, okay, these are the finances and this is how we're going to invest. I always say we need to invest in our young people. We need to invest in people in general as an organization, as a sector. Ultimately, everything that we do as social work, social care is people, is relationship based. So in order to see a brighter future for these young people, let's invest. Give them the opportunity, give them the chance. And if they make it, they make it. If they don't, they don't, and we can be there to support them, and we can be there, we can be there to just to show them how to do it, So for me, it is about people. Again, I think for me, a lot of young people are just questioning life. A lot of young people have had a reality check or a wake-up call and are just very uncertain with a lot of things. A lot of them are being influenced. Again, part of my job as a counsellor as well, this comes into it. A lot of young people are feeding off the wrong things. You've got social media, you've got these celebrities, you've got the world, you've got the negative impact of the media and the news. And so they're confused. They're very, very confused. And so for me, I always say, if I can be the light in that situation, I'm going to have to keep speaking.
No, I do agree with you. The social media pressures, especially now with the with the lockdown, it's forced young people to really resort to social media as their kind of main interaction point because obviously we can't see anyone. So no, I can see where that would add a lot of pressure. What I'd like to understand is
Can I just
yeah.
So I wanted to say something again on social media. And I think as social workers, sometimes we're more than often quite slow to catch up. You know that social media is very, very heavy right now at the moment. So for us to capitalize on that, we need to start putting out content from social workers' perspective. How to engage young people, what to do when engaging with young people. Sometimes I always find that things happen in society and then social care is like 2 years or a year later to catch up with that.
Yeah.
So we need to be robust. We need to be forward thinking. And I think that starts with our organizations. Who is at the top? Who are the decision makers? Who is making these policies and these decisions? We need to be having conversations with them, so it's impactful for the young person because it's a trickle down effect.
No, it's really refreshing to hear that, Chris, because actually that kind of sets out the reason why we're having this conversation today via Zoom, because the whole point of these kind of interviews is really to try and get ahead of the times where whether we have a viewer who's watching us have this discussion and take one thing from this discussion around the social media point and being ahead of the times. That's the way I feel we will influence our young people, through social media, through being with the new generation, as they call it. And I think being a few years behind isn't going to cut it in this day and age. So I do completely agree with you on that point. And it's refreshing to hear that from a professional as well. Look, I'd like to ask you a few questions around Daddy's Special Drink. I got an opportunity to read the book, and there was a few things that stood out to me. I think, look, I'll share them with you, and then hopefully you can provide a little bit more detail around it. But the first thing that really stood out to me was that Rio was upset, and the first person to identify his kind of state was his best friend Jojo. So for me, that made me realize that actually these young people, it's not the social worker or the teacher or the carer who's identifying it first in all situations. Actually, it starts with the conversation with Rio's best friend, where there's a bond and a relationship there. And another point which really impacted me was when Bernie, the social worker, becomes involved in this situation because Rio's father is obviously drinking this special drink, which is making mum and dad argue, which is, this is a real case scenario of how it plays out in real life, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Bernie, the social worker, is now involved, and suddenly Rio feels he's in trouble. And I'm thinking, is that really the consensus? Do these young people genuinely feel, like they are in trouble because a social worker's, present? And that really hit me, because actually, from a social work perspective, I guess we're there to try and support these young people, but actually that's not the real case.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I work with many social workers. I've been doing this social work for the last 9 years now. And there are many good social workers that are out there. And I'm thinking to myself, why aren't the good ones highlighted? How come you don't see that good piece of work that this social worker has carried out with this family or this young person? Unfortunately, the narrative is a social worker is going to come and either take me away from my parents, either not make me feel good, or either make me feel upset. I work with a lot of teenagers actually, and a lot of care leavers and young people. And speaking to these young people, they've more than often had a negative experience with a social worker. And if I look at the crux, if I dig deep and look at the crux of the answers, it's because they were misunderstood. They weren't heard. The social worker didn't hear what the young person was saying. The social worker more than often saw there was an issue, but failed to dig a little bit deeper. And so for me, I always say that my thing is about changing the narrative. If I can be that person, or if I can help change and influence a culture, a new generation culture of social workers that are there for the people and are there for the families, I'm all for it. Media does not help. when it comes to social workers and how we are portrayed. Someone needs to be in the media speaking on behalf of social workers. Someone needs to be in the tabloids speaking on behalf of social workers, saying, actual fact, hold on a minute, social workers do a bloody good job on a day-to-day basis, you know? So I think for me, it is going to have to be a conversation, a continual conversation of changing the narrative. And, you know, I always say Rome wasn't built in a day. You have to start somewhere. And it's these platforms, it's these books, it's having conversations on my day-to-day work and my day-to-day life that, you know, we can start to propel change. So, yeah.
I think you make a valid point. The first step is, you know, to make an impact is to take the first step effectively. And I think, you know, having read your book, Daddy's Special Drink, I can see that this is the first step to really connecting with young people. And like I say, you know, I'd really, you know, for me, I can see this being a really crucial tool in mainstream social work to support young people to better understand what they're going through, what the process is. And I'd like to see this book being used mainstream. And I know you mentioned kind of in passing that some councils or some social workers are using this on their visits, you said?
Yeah, so at the moment, it's currently in 7 different local authorities as their direct work toolkit across in the UK. So social workers are picking up the book if they've got a visit to a family that have got similar issues as Rio. They take that book with them and they help the child to understand, okay, this is maybe the role of a social worker, because the book does many different things. It explains the role of a social worker. It also explains the role of a child protection conference, because children don't understand a big meeting with different professionals, what's going on. It also explains, obviously, what it's like living with an alcoholic parent. So for me, if I can get that across many different local authorities here in the UK and nationally, I think that's, again, another way to have those conversations. So for me, like I was saying, this is the first book of many to come. I've just finished the second book, which is on about sexual abuse. Okay, so that talks about, so that's about, you know, a child growing up in a sexually abusive home and what that's like, and helps them to put into pictures and words of how to get their support. So I'm going to do quite a lot of different books. So for, physical violence, domestic abuse, race, culture, religion, identity, just short stories to really hone in and help young people and children understand their day-to-day reality and where to get the support and how to speak out as well, because that's key. There's no point writing a book if a child isn't able to be supported thereafter. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And you know, Chris, what's really coming across in this discussion that we're having is your passion, and I love to see it. You know, that's something that no one can take away from you, right? So that it's clear and evident that you are passionate about supporting 100%. People, and everyone we speak to on this platform, you know, everyone's passionate and impacting in a different way. But I think, you know, what you've done with this book is amazing, and I think I'm really keen to see the next book come out and the one after that, and it's something that you know, I'd probably read this to my own daughter, you know, regardless of the situation. I think it'd be really good for her to understand. You know, these are, you know, because I think, like you identified in the book, it's young people that support other young people. It's that first conversation, and yeah, I can see that your passions come through in the book. And look, just to sum up, Chris, you didn't know this, but what we are going to be doing is for the first kind of 5 people to kind of share their view or like the video, we'll be sending them a copy of Daddy's Special Drink.
Awesome.
So as long as you're a social worker, then you'll be receiving a copy of Daddy's Special Drink. So make sure you like, comment as well. We'd always want to hear your viewpoint, and I'm sure myself or Chris will be able to kind of come back to you in the comment section. But as such, look, Chris, thank you for taking time out of your busy day. It is appreciated, and I think this conversation was quite refreshing to hear, especially from somebody like yourself who's kind of been around the block, as to say. So you've seen the worst of it and the best of it. So look, guys, I know you'll be anticipating the next video, so please like, share and comment on this video, and I will see you guys on the next episode. So thank you very much.